This week's moral challenge is something that I've thought about on and off over the years. And that is the moral challenge of cynicism and despair. Please understand, someone could be hearing me use the terms cynicism and despair and say, oh, but I have good reasons for my cynicism and despair. I think you may, but I want to propose another approach rather than cynicism and despair, and here's why. Cynicism leads us to withdraw from things. When we're cynical because we're just tired, or cynical because of massive disappointments, the tendency is to withdraw. And sometimes there's another temptation, which is a strange temptation to omniscience, knowing everything because of how disappointed we are by the thing that we had a certain set of expectations and then we were really let down. So now we think, now I really know all about this thing. I understand that temptation. It's a great one. But the problem is, of course, that we withdraw. Well, what are we withdrawing to? We're withdrawing to our own world. That's not necessarily the most helpful place to withdraw. And then despair means that there's a view of everything, or a view of the circumstance that causes despair, that basically says there really is no hope here. There really is no possibility of any kind of better possibility or better future. And at the risk of sounding like what I've said in some other videos, what this really means is that we are having an amnesia about our faith in two ways. With cynicism, here's one of the ways to think about it. We cannot read the Bible and avoid the fact that a lot of things go wrong. A lot of betrayals happen. People do very sinful things, horrible things. There are great disappointments that people have. But it's very interesting to note that the overall message of the Bible is not sin is real, people will disappoint you, institutions will disappoint you, get used to it, end of story. Instead, the story of the Bible is, yes, things happen, horrible things happen, lots of horrible things happen, but they don't have the last word. God has the last word. And God makes it very clear that he has the last word by Christ coming, living a perfect life, dying, being resurrected, ascending, and he's going to return and make everything right. The Christian who has encountered Jesus, the Christian is the one who's encountered Jesus, is someone who is a recipient of a tremendous gift that ought to bring hope with it. And it's true that sometimes the intensity of our circumstances, the scope, the scale of our circumstances can lead us to be cynical and to think things couldn't possibly get better, it's just better for me to disengage. But here's what's interesting. When the Bible shows ways that things have gone wrong, and look through the Psalms, you have the full range of emotions. Most of the Psalms do not leave us in a place of despair. Then the Psalm 88 is very heavy, it's dark. But most of the Psalms do not lead us to look away from God. They turn us toward God, and they lead us to praise God and to hope in God and to have our refuge in God. Why? Because this is where hope is. This is where we turn to the one who made all this and who gives us the greatest promises. And what that also means, though, is that then we are to engage in life rather than to disengage in life. And this is what cynicism does. It makes us disengage. And similarly with despair, despair means we just give up. We kind of succumb to the fact that things couldn't possibly get better. And again, because of the scale, because of the immediacy of an experience, because of the intensity of it, the temptation to despair is a real thing. But again, with what God shows us, if he overcomes death, we can't ever act as if the things that tempt us to despair really have the final word. Those things, they make a lot of noise. Those things are real. Those things land on us sometimes in very heavy ways, but they are not ever excuse for us to really be agents of despair. Yet we are in a moment. It's not the only moment that's ever happened, but we are in a moment where there can be a lot of things that tempt us to despair. We're always finding out about something else that went wrong. Someone else who was a good example who blew it. Or somebody has an experience within their institution or within their family or within their church that really says, I'm just going to draw back. I'm just going to pull away. And I just feel kind of hopeless. I propose the following instead. Instead of cynicism, replace that with what I call a blues disposition. And what that means is you tell the truth about what's gone wrong. You lament what's gone wrong. You cry, you wail even if necessary, but you don't disengage. Cynicism withdraws and checks out of life. The blues acknowledges what's gone wrong, but engages life. And we also then, in face of despair, what do? We remember what we really believe, that Christ has come, Christ has died, Christ is risen. Because he's risen, I can't really give despair the last word. Because despair is what certainly was the case after Christ died and before he was resurrected. But we are on the other side of the resurrection. So despair cannot be our disposition. The temptation to cynicism and despair are great, but God wins in the end, and that's really the last word. And if that's all true, and if we keep turning to that and letting that sink into us more and more, we'll tell the truth about our disappointments, but we'll be able to better resist the temptations to cynicism and despair.